Hey, welcome back. So, last time I said we were going to start talking about different paths, and this is where I have to get just a little bit careful about the limitations of what I'm going to be able to provide. I can certainly give you guidance based on my observations, what I've seen, what I've read, and so forth, but I'm certainly not a doctor, not a scientist. And actually, there are some great resources on YouTube that I'm going to go ahead and provide links to. These are resources that I did not know about at the time when I started off. It took about 2 years for me to actually come to know of these, and I found them to be so well done that I figured if I was ever in a position to recommend learning nutrition to other people, that this is where I would send them. But before we get to that, let's start talking about some of these different paths. When you think about how to eat, the first thing that comes to mind is probably questions around things like diets. I've mentioned a few in the past, but everything from high protein, high carb, low fat, high fat, keto, vegan, carnivore, low sugar, low salt, a certain amount of water, what have you. There are so many options, so many possibilities, and it's hard to know, well, what's the right thing for me? What I want you to bear in mind is that any or none of these could be appropriate based on what it is you want. And I'm going to keep bringing it back to that. What is it you want? Ultimately, whatever path you take has to serve that intention. Diets, when we think about things like keto, for example, they're really just a way of helping put guidelines around the kinds of foods that you eat. If you're not on a quote unquote diet and you don't have a whole lot of rigor and understanding around your nutritional needs, it can be very difficult to make choices from literally everything that's out there. This is my opinion. If you are, for example, vegan, well, that narrows down your choices quite a bit. And in some cases, that's a good thing. It gives you guardrails. So if you stick to whatever that diet is, vegan, keto, or what have you, your number of choices are reduced. And if you enjoy the life that you're getting and the results you're getting from those choices, great path for you. Other options like, high carb, high fat, low fat, those are a little bit more difficult to stick to. And ultimately, I'm not sure how useful they are as paths for nutrition. The other thing to keep in mind is that our nutritional needs change over time. For example, you're starting right now, and your starting point is whatever you are currently doing. If you start literally today, your starting point is what you ate yesterday. Let's say you make some changes today. Great. In a month, maybe 2 months, maybe more, maybe less time, those needs will change if you are progressing towards your goals. Let's say you're trying to burn fat. I mean, let's be honest, that's what most people are looking to do. They say lose weight, but ultimately you'd rather not lose any muscle weight, right? You'd rather just lose fat. That's what people really mean when they say that, usually. So as you lose fat, if that's what you're doing, if you've set your goals up to lose fat, you are eating in a way and living your life in such a way that supports fat loss, and you start to do that, you are going to have to change up your eating eventually. You can't literally lose fat into perpetuity. We do need a certain amount of fat on our bodies. I want you to worry less about the perfect approach and instead focus on what is my next step? What is the right thing for me where I'm at this time? Again, being very intentional. My personal opinion, I would say the best choice is whatever you are able to stick with and see results. However you measure those results, whatever it is you're looking to do. I know I'm using fat loss as the example here because, again, it's such a common goal for people. But maybe instead you have a goal around, running a certain distance. Maybe you're interested in running a half marathon, for example. You're going to have to train to a certain level, right? To acclimate your body to that kind of strenuous activity. And part of that is going to be eating to feed that activity. If your approach matches your intention, matches your motivation, you're going to do fine. So then based on that, where do you start though? I can't just give you general ideas, right? Give me some more concrete information. Give me a concrete starting point. Again, I have to be a little bit careful here, but here's what I would recommend to begin with. And it's going to require a little bit of effort, a little bit of learning. This is where the thoughts of, oh, it would be really cool to do this thing, start meeting the road of, oh, now I've got to actually start doing that. The first step is to inform yourself on what you're doing right now. What I would recommend is using some sort of food tracker. It doesn't necessarily have to be on the daily right now, but maybe as an easy way to calculate what it is you have been doing. And a common example, and certainly the one I use, is MyFitnessPal. There's some things I like and don't like about that particular app, but you can download it for free, last I saw anyway. It doesn't necessarily require a subscription for all the features. And you can put in what it is you're eating right now to get a decent idea of where your starting point is. And then based on what your goal is to lose weight, gain weight, what have you, you can make adjustments accordingly. I will tell you, if you're struggling to take the time and find the motivation to figure out where you're at right now, what your baseline is through whether it's MyFitnessPal or putting together your own little handwritten spreadsheet if you want, or do something in a spreadsheet app or program on your computer, you're kind of setting yourself up at a disadvantage, because how are you going to know what right looks like if you don't know what you're doing right now? It's very difficult. There are some options. I wouldn't necessarily recommend them, but I'll go ahead and toss them out there. And again, I am going to link some additional resources that I think are from people far more knowledgeable than I am, that can give you some additional understanding on why it's such a good idea to set up that baseline, as well as many other helpful tips. So, first option, if we don't want to do the work of figuring out what our baseline is, again, recommend that you do, but if that's not where you're at right now, would be to use something like a calorie estimator, like the one on the USDA's website. And I'll go ahead and link that in the description as well, so you've got access to that. I mentioned previously that you don't want to go directly to what your goal, quote unquote, should be. The best steps are small steps, make changes over time. And if you use a calorie calculator such as this, it's not going to have an idea of what you're doing right now. So it may not be able to give you the best increment. The information it spits out may be where you need to get eventually, but it doesn't necessarily mean that's where you need to force yourself to be right now. And the other option, I really can't strongly recommend this, but I say doing something is better than doing nothing. I say starting, as long as you are willing to adjust as you go and as your goal is or is not being met, come up with a number, make up a number. Whatever, quote unquote, seems right to you. If you want to start with 2,000 because that's what shows up on the nutritional label on your food, great. It's at least a starting point. If you find that your goals aren't being served by that number, then be ready to adjust accordingly. Neither one of those options are great, but if you trust in yourself to make adjustments based on your progress, at least it's a start. Okay, for these other resources, I strongly recommend the Fat Loss Dieting Made Simple playlist from Renaissance Periodization. I'll go ahead and link that in the description as well. Obviously, I'm not affiliated with anybody, not sponsored by anybody. This channel has no idea I'm here. As the playlist description says, it's Fat Loss Dieting Made Simple. I believe he really makes it easy for newcomers to understand. So definitely recommend that playlist. Another one, actually, from the same resource, Renaissance Periodization, is the Nutrition Myths playlist. I'll go ahead and link that as well. Make some interesting call outs on common myths around nutrition and give some good guidance. So the right path is whatever suits your goal. Where do you start? Well, you're started right now. If you're willing to take the time, and I certainly hope you are, analyze what it is you're doing right now, write it down, find a tracker, and put it in. If you prefer not to go backwards, certainly use an app, for example, on MyFitnessPal, to track yourself going forward for a little while. The nice thing is, as you track, it gets easier and easier to do so. I might eventually put some information out there on some, MyFitnessPal quick tips. Try to make it a little less intimidating. And then over time, simply adjust what it is you're eating, how much you're eating, based on what the Renaissance Periodization videos outline for you. Hey, just a quick cut in here. I realized as I was sort of going through the footage and trying to get this spoiler alert, probably final video of mine put together, I sort of left out one key point that I had mentioned in my very first video. In this particular one right now, I'm talking about different diet options, ways to think about the kind of goals that you want to shoot for. But in my first video, I mentioned that there came a point where I realized that I needed help and that I had no shame admitting that. And I never really covered what that particular option was. For me, that was finding a local gym that had, guided classes, including one-on-one training, if you so chose, but it also had nutritional coaching, and it even had like check-in sessions where you would, outside of, working out time, you would actually sit and meet and, track your progress and so forth that way. So if you are in a position to really take action and you think, gosh, I think I really need that extra layer. I need somebody to ask questions that are particular to me, like one-on-one, really from somebody who has seen my effort. That is definitely a path that I could recommend. So if you have a gym in your area and you want to self-guide your workouts, great option as well. But if you need that extra little bit of help, like I did, certainly, then one that has perhaps classes, but especially that has, you might call them accountability sessions really, but just check-in sessions that you can ask questions to. They can give you guidance, can give you ideas, even on specific food ideas. You know, if you have a particular goal in mind and they're able to give you, say, a nutritional macro, I'm not going to go into all the details of that right now. Maybe there's a need for more videos, but I think others have those pretty well covered as well. But they can give you ideas on the type of foods that could be, including very low effort foods. That is really what got me from being somebody that basically was not feeding themselves. I mean, yes, I could do DoorDash, but I never really cooked. I only made my first batch of rice like what, a month and a half ago? I know, sad. I was doing bags of rice instead, and those are a good option for where I was at the time, and that might be a good option for you as well. So sorry, I forgot to mention that, but definitely there are resources in person if you need that. A lot of people can go the digital route, like any sort of online learning. It just did not work for me, so I wanted to make sure I tossed it out there as well. Okay, back to the rest of the video. In the end, ultimately, if this is your intention, you can do this. The good news is, how do I change? How do I get fitter, healthier? These are questions that have been asked by many people. So that's the good news. And that means that there are many people who have found the answer, and there is information out there to help you get to that point. I hope the places that I'm recommending to you, you find useful. Ultimately, I would like for this channel to be obsolete because people are able to live with intention. And when it comes to eating specifically, they understand what it is they need to do and are able to live intentionally that way as well. The last thing I'll add for now is you are stronger than you realize. I don't know you, but I know that. Making changes can be difficult, but if they are serving an intentional purpose within you, if they are serving the true you, they can actually be a lot of fun. Ultimately, when I decided to start doing YouTube videos, this is kind of the point I wanted to get to, was to get people to sort of open up to new possibilities within themselves. And then if fitness and health and nutrition was something that they were interested in, that I could link them to the right resources to help them with their goal. And I hope I've done that at this point. I might still make some videos more on mindfulness probably than any sort of scientific or a numeric breakdown on nutrition. Nutrition is still something I'm very interested in, but again, I can't really speak authoritatively on the subject. All I can do is speak from my own experiences. So maybe I'll see you again. Perhaps I'll post another video tomorrow. I have no idea at this point. I feel like I've kind of accomplished what I wanted to do, but I've told you to ask yourself questions, to be intentional. And so now it is time for me to go back to asking myself questions about what is it that I want? What is it that I want to do? Where does my path go from here? And I'm really curious to see what I'm going to answer myself. I have no idea. So I hope to see you again, but if not, I wish you all the best on your journey. And thanks for spending some of it with me.